ask that you be with him as he speaks. Use him as a vessel to communicate to us. We just want to thank you for who you are and what you do for us each and every day. And we just want to thank you for your son, his death, his resurrection, that we may be saved and live with you in eternity. We ask this all in his name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Is this working? Am I on? All right. Do you guys really want to sit in the back, or do you want to come up and join the rest of us? We have this huge chasm here. Come on up. That'd be great. I mean, look at this guy. He's sitting all by himself. Poor guy. All right. So is this you guys are the whole youth group here? Is there really only one female in the whole group? Oh, I was going to say, I am so sorry. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Yeah, come on up. You can sit middle. All right. So my name is Jason Lief. I teach at Northwestern, but I also have a part-time job. I work for an organization called the National Immigration Forum. And my job is to go around to, I'm what they call a BBB mobilizer, Bibles, Badges, and Business. So I talk to churches, I talk to business leaders, and I talk to law enforcement on the issue of immigration. And the people that I talk to tend to, so if we think of this as a political issue, the people that I talk to are usually politically center-right. I'm not sure where you all stand politically, but most of the people that I talk to would consider themselves probably to be Republicans or somewhere in the middle. And then theologically also kind of center-right. And the reason that I do this work is to try to get beyond actually the dynamics of thinking that this is like a Democrat or a Republican issue, liberal or conservative, and try to find a way beyond all of that stuff and actually talk about what are the issues with immigration and what are some practical ways forward. And I've had it before where I go to a place and I got people who think this is kind of a liberal Democrat issue, and then I'm going to say certain things that they're not going to agree with. I had one guy who went down to Missouri, and he didn't want to come, and his pastor encouraged him to come, and he did, and came up to me afterwards, and he said, I agree with almost everything you said. So hopefully some of the things that we talk about here tonight are just a way to kind of help us think about the issue. Now, I know for the, you guys are all high school, right? Y'all go, where do y'all go? You go to Unity, Western, Sheldon. All of them go. All three. Okay. Oh, nice. Okay. So I realized that for you guys, and I can remember that you're sitting over here, some of this stuff, like when we start talking about, politics, voting, you guys probably don't vote yet or can't vote yet. But there is something that I want to try to convince you of today or tonight. So hopefully I'll be able to speak to everybody, and especially kind of speak to you and your generation. So we'll see. I tried to get the slideshow to work. We'll see if it works. I can never, ever get this thing to work, but I realize I have to turn it on first to get it to work. So am I supposed to talk to this nicely or something? Okay, there it is. All right. You probably can't, maybe you can't see these very well, but I do want to start with some questions. I'm really curious to see what your thoughts are on this issue. So I have 3 questions up there, and we don't have to talk about all of them. What I'm going to focus on today are, all 3 of these things actually, but probably the second one the most. How do we look at this not as Democrats or Republicans, but how do we look at this as Christians? But I'm just kind of curious to hear from you, and I'll start with the high school students, but when you think about immigration, or when you heard that, some bearded guy in a flannel is going to come talk to you about immigration, what do you think of right away? If I say immigration, you say what? Don't think about it. Just, I say immigration, you say Traveling long distances. Mexico. Coming from one country to another. What did you say? Immigrants. Yes, very good. All right. Anything else? How about over here on this side? What do you think? I'm not putting you on the spot, but you're all by yourself, so I get to pick on you. What do you think? If I say immigration, you say one country for another. You're piggybacking off of what he said. All right. Does it give you positive, negative, or you're not really sure? Like feelings. Like if I say immigration, you feel what? What's that? Why is it for you? Okay. Yeah.
Opinion of immigration. When you say immigration,
Yeah.
my viewpoint has changed.
Okay. From what to what?
I would say, it's like, there probably was a day when I thought, well, they're coming over here and blah, 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 and they're not paying taxes.
Yeah.
Something stupid like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And after spending time with immigrants,
Yeah.
getting to know.
Where do you spend time with immigrants?
Well, we spend time with immigrants in Kansas City.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
that's probably my largest connection.
Yep.
And other trips that we've made, immigrants, minorities, things like that. Over
Yep.
the years, my viewpoint has changed.
Okay.
Simply because
You know them, and you then get to know the complexity of the issue a little bit.
it's not just they're coming over here.
Yeah.
It's a lot. There's a lot more involved.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you guys have immigrants at your school, like students who come from other countries at your school? A few of you saying yes. What countries? Do you know? Mexico? India? Yeah. It's interesting how when we think about immigration, our tendency is to think, like you said, Mexico, and yet there are immigrants coming to our country from all over the place. India. When I was in Minneapolis, I worked with Somalis. Yeah. How about the adults? So we'll move. I know, Dan, you're an adult, kind of, but when you hear the word immigration, what are some of the things that you think about? What are some of the issues that you think about? Kenyans. And where do you work with them? Okay. Okay. Oh, at NCC. Nice. Okay. Delightful people. Yes. Others.
They think they're getting a safer environment.
Yes. Yeah.
In the United States every day, but they're not close to what they need.
Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit. What are some of the issues with immigration? And when we talk about, for example, right now, there's a lot of talk about the border and what's going on at the border. And when you start to peel it back a little bit, you see there are some issues about violence. Where are they kind of coming from? And when you start talking about why they come. Yeah. Others?
I think it's just overwhelming, both the need and the amount.
Yes, it is overwhelming. Yeah. So one of the things that I want to try to tell you about tonight is the immigration system itself. So I don't know if any of you ever thought or heard somebody say, why can't they just come legally like everybody else? And I've even heard like my wife's grandmother, she immigrated from the Netherlands and came through Ellis Island, got on a train, got off maybe here at Sheldon. I thought it was Sanborn, and so some people are like, well, why can't they just come legally? Well, there's a big difference between when immigrants came back then and now, and some of it has to do with the immigration laws that we have. And part of the problem is actually the immigration laws. So there is no line for many of these people to get in. And for people to want to come legally, for example, it might even take 10 to 15 years for them to do it the legal way. And I guess I would throw out, I know as high school kids, you're not thinking about it this way, but if you think about it from a parental perspective, and you think about the fact that you have gangs that are shaking down your business and say that if you don't pay so much money, we're going to kill your family, and your family's in trouble. What would you do? I'm not saying it's necessarily makes it right that they come across the border, But when you put it in those terms, there are issues that are pushing people to come and to take the risk to actually come. And we want to maybe talk a little bit about some of those things. So what I try to do, what am I doing here? Am I clicking this? Is it working? What's happening here? Is that the next slide? All right, yeah. So this kind of hairy-looking dude, you guys watch Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, any of those types of things? He could fit in like at Hogwarts or something. But his name is Rowan Williams. He's the former Archbishop of Canterbury. He was the head of the Anglican Church. He writes this book called Being Disciples. And one of the ways I wanted you to begin thinking about the issue of immigration is to frame it in the terms of what does the Bible say about what it means to be human? And how should we as Christians, I realize that we're part of the United States, and you got people from Mexico and Guatemala and Kenya and all of these different nationalities. And yet, when we read scripture, we see there's something about being a human being. And so I think biblically we can start here. So this is from his book, Being Disciples. And I like this quote. I know my voice, when I teach, I always tell students I have a career waiting for me in relaxation tapes because I tend to put people to sleep, like my students. So I'll try to say it in such a way that it causes you not to go into a slight coma. I'm looking at you especially because you look like you're about ready to zonk. All right, so I'll try to use some voice inflection here. But the reverence I owe to every human person is connected with the reverence I owe to God, who brings them into being and keeps them in being. I stand before holy ground when I encounter another person, not because they are born with a set of legal rights, which can be demanded and enforced, but because there's a dimension of their life I shall never fully see. The dimension where they come forth from the purpose of God into the world and with a unique set of capacities and possibilities. The Christian disciple will have the same commitment to human rights and human dignity, but they will have it because of this underlying reverence, not because of some legal entitlement. I share this quote with you because we'll talk about human rights and things like that, but where he is saying is from a biblical perspective, when we see another human person, we see somebody who's made in the image of God, and that person is a mystery, someone that we owe reverence to because God has created that person. And I think sometimes when we get caught up in thinking about, well, this person's from here and this person's from here, maybe even you think about, this person goes to Sheldon High, this person goes to Unity, and we begin to label people according to those types of things, we miss out on the fact that we're all made in the image of God. And what he wants to say is that human dignity and human flourishing is grounded in the fact that we're all made in the image of God. And so what does that then mean as we think about people who are leaving Honduras or Guatemala now because of violence and they're coming to our southern border? How does that play into the equation as we think about this as Christians? So I'm assuming that you know a little bit about the Bible. You guys know what Genesis is? Yeah? Okay. Just check. You know what Genesis is? All right. You know what Genesis is? Okay, just checking. You kind of put your head down like, please don't call on me because I don't know. All right, Genesis 1 and 2, you get two creation stories, and both of them talk about the image of God. Genesis 1, you get what I would call the functional image. It's like when it says that human beings are made in the image of God, what it means is that they're like markers. So in the olden days, these pagan religions, what they would do is they'd make idols. I used to have a picture of the idol because I'm Scandinavian, so I had this picture of Thor, right? This idol that was made of Thor and Odin. And so when you came across it, you knew this land belongs to Thor. And so in Scripture, when it says that we're made in the image of God, what it says is we're not images like stone and wood. We're living images. So that when I see you, and I see that you are a living image of God, we know whose territory this is. This world belongs to God. And so that's the functional image. God has put us here as his representatives. But then there's also a relational image. If you read Genesis 2, it talks about how to be a human being means that you have a relationship with God, creation. Remember the Adam and Eve, right? Out of the rib, boop, and Adam. I always say that now there's two females here, right? That when Adam looks and he turns and he sees Eve, what's the first thing he does? What does he break into? What does he say? Gotcha there. I get it. I get the joke. Yeah. Bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. You know what he's doing? It's poetry. You guys want to get a date? I don't know if you guys got boyfriends. I don't know if you guys have girlfriends. I'm looking at you. I mean, you look like cool dudes. So, but if you really want to sweep them off their feet, cite poetry to them. But this is what Adam does. He sees Eve and he begins, you are bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Poetry. What does it mean to be a human being? We need each other. We need to be in relationship with one another. And so this functional image and the relational image. And I want you to see that quote there from Rowan Williams. It says, this means that whenever I face another human being, I face a mystery. And one of the things I want you to be thinking about is this too. So one of my favorite theologians is a guy named Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And he would always say that to love, Jesus, when asked which is the greatest commandment, what does he say? Love God and love your neighbor. So it's vertical and it's horizontal. What if we actually began to think, this is how Bonhoeffer would say it, that when I love my neighbor, I'm loving God. Why? Because we're made in the image of God. And so when we talk about the divine mystery, what if we began looking at each other as that mystery? That there's a depth to all of you that I can never know, that even Dane can never know about you, right? That you can, and I'm getting deep here, but I teach Augustine. Augustine would even say that you're a mystery even unto your very self, that you don't even really know fully who you are. And he even will say that God is closer to us than our very self. What is my point? What if we began to see each other as human beings as the divine mystery that we are? And what does that mean when you're at school and you encounter people from other cultures? Or you encounter someone from Mexico or El Salvador or Guatemala living in this country because of some of the hardships that they've faced. I understand there's legal stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that. But from a Christian perspective, what does it mean to see one another as human beings made in the image of God? I think that's an important place for us to start. Now, what's interesting is that Genesis 3, what you get is the shattering of the image. So if you were to come to Northwestern and take my Bible class, I can't remember Alyssa, did you have my Bible class? Yeah, she took both of them, right? We would start with Genesis 1, go through 2 and 3, and we would talk about creation, what it means to be human. But then, you know the Cain and Abel story? What you get is the shattering of this image. The fall in Genesis 3 and Genesis 4 is it leads to this breaking. And I wanted to put the Cain and Abel one up here because it speaks to, we do violence to one another. And we don't just do violence to one another like physically, like if I were to pound you in the face, right? We do violence to one another when we name one another. And we think we can know somebody. And think about how we categorize people. And we use that as a way to control and to kind of put people in their place. This is grounded in this sin that has shattered this image. We all need one another. And the diversity of people in this world represent the diversity of God's image. And yet now we hate one another and we hurt one another. And I think we can see that in, first of all, this last kind of political thing. I don't care what side you're on, Democrat or Republican. It got nasty. But we also see it in the immigration issue when we begin to label people, right? So how do we as Christians approach that idea? And then come let us build ourselves a city. Anybody know what this is? Genesis, yeah, what? Say it. Tower of Babel. Genesis 11. It's an idol. I mean, it is a humanity. If you read the story, they're basically saying, we'll make a name for ourselves and we'll scare God, right? Maybe God will leave us alone. We're going to make a name for ourselves. And it becomes the pinnacle of sin, where humans in their own power want to kind of make their own world and make a name for themselves. And yet what we see in the biblical story is God comes down and scatters them, but then he calls Abraham and he says, instead of Abraham making a name for himself, what does he say? He says, I'm going to make your name great, right? And so, oh, there we go. There it is. Oh, went through it fast. There we go. Genesis 12. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, why do I want to emphasize this? Well, first of all, think about what sin is. Sin is violence to my neighbor. Here in Genesis 12, what we find is God is saying to Abraham that I'm going to take you and I'm going to make a nation, and that you are going to be a blessing, and that all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, one of the things that I try really hard, and Alyssa can attest to this unless she was sleeping during my class, one of the things that I try to get my students at Northwestern to think about is sometimes I think, can think that Christianity is kind of all about dying and going to heaven. Now, is it about going to heaven? Yes. So don't hear me wrong here tonight, okay? But what if the gospel is actually about us being turned back outward? Sin is about being inward, right? We're inwardly turned. And what if the gospel is actually about the Christian community being a blessing to the world? That God picks us up, dusts us off, kind of resuscitates us, that's Easter, which we just had, and then pushes us back out into the world so that we can once again be a sign and a blessing and a marker and a sign of the God who has created us and the God who loves us. And I share this with you because I want you to begin thinking about this immigration issue. And I think about where I live. Someone could ask me, how did you get involved in immigration work? How did I end up getting a part-time job doing this kind of stuff, right? You know what the answer is? Honestly, I bought a trampoline. And I bought a trampoline for my kids. Any of you guys have a trampoline? All right. You guys live in town or out of town? What happens when you put a trampoline up in your backyard? All the neighbor kids come. And you know what my neighborhood is increasingly made up of? It used to be when I moved in 15 years ago. It was predominantly white people like me. You know who lives there now? Guatemalan people. And so I put up this trampoline, and I'll tell you, they came in hordes. And I come in my backyard, and they're jumping up and down. And first of all, they speak Spanish, and I don't know how to speak Spanish. And so I'm trying to communicate with them. I pull my phone out, and I go to Google Translate. Have you ever tried to do that? It's terrible. I said things stupidly. You know what's funny, though, is I would try to say something in Spanish, and all of a sudden they would fall over laughing. And then this one who kind of knew some English was trying to teach me how to say the things that I was trying to say. Now, I'll tell you what. Have I been a blessing to them? Probably, right? I let them use our sleds. I give them cookies and candy on Halloween. I go over there and give them all this stuff. But I also want to tell you, they have been a blessing to me. Little Lindsay is her name. She's one of the cutest little girls you'll see, little glasses on. She comes over. She talks my ear off. She rides her bike. She's always asking me questions about how to say certain things in English, and I'm asking her how to say things in Spanish. That's how I got involved in immigration work. And I dare say, especially if you have people at your school who are from other cultures, and if you took the risk, and I'm telling you, it's a risk. I looked foolish to these little kids. You got to look worth it. It's worth it. Am I dying up here or what? Can I just take this off? Can you hear me if I just yell? Okay, good. This is really annoying. All right? So, to be a blessing is, I think, at the center of my immigration work is, look, I'm going to talk a little bit about politics and policy, and you guys are going to be like, boring. How do you just be a blessing? And you know what being a blessing is again, putting yourself in a situation where you're going to look foolish, but asking other people about their culture, just being interested and being curious. And I bet you if you did that, these people would open up to you and really want to talk to you. And you could be a blessing to them, and they would bless you as well. So thinking about what it means to be a blessing. So one of the things that I do is I use this piece of scripture. It's a weird scripture to go to talk about immigration. But, I could go to Leviticus and tell you, how we're supposed to treat the immigrant. I could, go to the Gospels. You've heard all these verses. Maybe you haven't, but a lot of you probably heard them. But I find 1 Peter 2 really interesting, because this is what it says. It says, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. So it ties back to the Abraham thing, right? You are now the people of God, God's own people, in order that we proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you've received mercy. Beloved, I urge you as aliens and exiles to abstain from the desires of the flesh that wage war against your soul. Conduct yourselves honorably among the Gentiles, so that though they malign you as evildoers, they may see your honorable deeds and glorify God when he comes to judge. So what he's doing is he's saying, look, we as Christians, this world in some ways, and the systems of this world, we're aliens and exiles, and yet we need to live within them. And what does it mean for us to live as a Christian community in the world amongst other groups of people? So that's what he's kind of talking about here. But then he says, for the Lord's sake, accept the authority of every human institution, whether of the emperor as supreme or of governors as sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to praise those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing right, you should silence the ignorance of the foolish. As servants of God, live as free people, yet do not use your freedom as a pretext for evil. Honor everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God. Honor the emperor. All right, I want to show you a couple of things that's going on here. And I can't remember what my slides look like. I always do this. I create slides. What am I supposed to be pointing at? That's not it. See if I can find it. All right. This is a picture of a Roman emperor. You guys studied Rome yet? You studied world history? No? You know anything about, when I say Rome, you know what I'm talking about, Roman Empire? All right. Anyone want to take a guess what emperor that is? Nero. And who was Nero? He was a bad dude. How was he a bad dude? He killed Christians. Guess who is the emperor when Peter is writing? Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, there we have it again. Guess who's emperor when Peter is writing this? Nero. Now, one of the things you have to understand about Rome is the emperors claimed to be divine. Augustus, Caesar Augustus, actually Luke 2, it's fascinating. What does it say? The days of Caesar Augustus, that's how it starts. Luke is trying to tell us, in the days of the one who claimed to be the son of the gods, is born the Son of God. There's a little bit of a competition happening here. The Roman emperors saw themselves as divine. I want you to see what Peter's actually doing here. When he talks about honor the emperor at the end, look at how it starts, verse 17. Honor everyone. Now, the Roman world was hierarchical. Emperor is at the top. Then you have males, females, and I hate to break it to you, but kids and slaves were on the same level. Like your parents could buy you or sell you, do whatever they want. You were property to your parent. But it's very hierarchical. Guess what the Christian community does? Guess what Peter is saying here? He is saying everybody deserves honor. You know what he's doing? He is taking Nero, the emperor, and he's putting him on the same level as everyone else, as slaves. Now, why would I want you to think about this verse when we think about immigration? Well, first of all, and I have a slide on here. I have this quote. For Peter, of course, Rome really was the issue. So that's there. But I want you to read, this is a quote from a theologian. He says, reverent fear is due God alone. A further denial of the divinity of the emperor. Most stunning, though, is that the same verb honor names the Christian obligation to all. It's hard to imagine a more devastating critique of the Roman way. For with the pairing of these two directives, Peter has flattened the status pyramid of the Roman world. He has just made one's response to the slave next door no less than one's response to the emperor. So there's a flattening that's happening. Okay? Now, what else is happening? And I think I got rid of this slide because I wanted to make sure, yeah. So I'll show you this slide. I want to talk about politics just for a second. And I got rid of the slide because I didn't want to make anybody mad tonight. Because somebody could look at my slide and be a little like, oh, I can't believe you put that on there. But I want you to hear me rightly here. Politics itself is good. So the Reformational tradition, I'm part of the Reformational tradition, the Christian Reformed Church. We look at the creation and we say, politics is good. Economics is good, right? All of it is good, and we should be a part of it. What happened in the last election cycle, I'm going to go on a limb, was not good. And I don't mean who won or lost. I mean the way in which we treated each other. And I would also say the way in which we elevated on both sides our candidates almost to godlike status. If you were on the right, you had people who they almost treated Donald Trump like a god. On the left, you had the same thing. And the reason I go to that passage is because I want you to see what Peter is actually doing. What he is doing is he is divinizing the emperor. The emperor is not a god. Yet, notice how he's also telling Christians, for the Lord's sake, accept every human institution, whether the emperor is supreme or of the government. In other words, he's saying, the emperor is not God. Honor everyone and honor the emperor, right? But you should participate in the political, economic, cultural order. What I think is important for us as Christians, and this is what I really want to speak to the high school students about at some point here, is recognizing how we hold in tension, how do we become a blessing? How do we honor the dignity of every human being? How do we deal with immigration and recognize that the people who are coming to the border are dealing with violence and poverty and things that we could never imagine? How do we affirm their dignity and their worth while also honoring the emperor in the sense of knowing we're a nation of laws and we need to hold the tension with having laws and also affirming the dignity of others. So I want to go there because I think there's a way to hold that tension. I think there's a way to say, yes, we need border security. Yes, we have laws. But here's the thing that I always, whenever I talk to Republicans, so I've talked to Congress people, I talked to senators, I've talked to 3 or 4 senators in meetings talking about immigration and so on. And I've always talked to them trying to get them to see that we are a nation of laws and we need to respect the rule of law. But we also realize that laws change. We make the laws. And sometimes we realize that certain laws had good intentions that now have had terrible consequences. So now let's work to change the laws. And so my organization is really working in the political realm to say, how can we honor the dignity of immigrants? How can we honor the dignity of people living in this country, some who are undocumented, which means they're here and they don't have papers and they've crossed illegally. But how do we honor their dignity and also find a way to deal with the system itself that is part of the problem? And I want to say this, it's the Christian responsibility to do both. So one of my pieces of encouragement to you all, and I know you're bored right now because I put you into a coma, but I'm guessing some of you are pretty sharp, bright, maybe wondering, what am I going to do with my life? And I want to encourage you to think about things like politics and economics and business as a way to serve God and as a way to bless other people. We need Christians in the political realm. We need Christians in business studying these things, working to make change and create change. And I think it's something for you You'll think about it later, but think about now just a little bit. How can you bless the immigrant neighbors at your high school now? And how could you possibly use the gifts God's given you to do the same thing in the future? Right? I'll let you guys all yell at me here in a little bit, but I'll just say a few more things and then we'll go on. So what I want us to be thinking about is this. The political sphere is good. That Scripture itself talks about the importance of the political sphere, the kingdom of God. And how can we as a Christian community engage in that part? Not everybody. Some of you here tonight are like, I hate politics. Totally fine. Right? But there's others that we need to have our voices heard to try to seek the common good and to seek the flourishing of creation. There's a guy named Jim Skill, and I won't bore you with what he has to say, but he is somebody who used to work in Washington, D.C. as a Christian, trying to make it so that our laws were there for the benefit of people, that to help create kind of human flourishing. So what does a Christian approach to politics looks like? I think it's a politics grounded in a love of God. It's a politics that is grounded in human dignity, love of neighbor. Look, I want to make this clear. Most of the politicians I talk to are Republicans. And Republicans right now are really big on border security, but there's not one of them. When they would hear the stories of some of the people on the call who are immigrants, of course they want that person to flourish. Of course, most of them were very caring and realized that something's got to happen and we need to make changes. They all said so. And what's interesting is that Democrats and Republicans are really closer than we think, except they're just emphasizing kind of two different things. But there's a place in the middle where, in my going around and talking to people, I have found that the majority of people land in that kind of middle space. So how do we get over all the loud voices that are yelling on both sides and move to the middle space and try to work together to make some changes? Okay? All right, so on to the emperor. We talked about that. Let me see. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be pointing at, but I'm pointing at something.
Maybe back here.
There we go. All right, back there? Okay. Sorry about that. All right, so, oh man, lost it. All right, I'll try that. Look at that. There it is. All right, so very quickly I want to do this, and then I want to leave time for question and answer. Okay, and I know, I'm just barfing out all this stuff at you, but hopefully you're getting something. So what are some of the issues? Well, first of all, you have push-pull factors. If you think about it, one of your relatives came to the United States from somewhere. Why? Why would they come here? And if you studied the history of your family, it probably would be really interesting. Many of them probably came here for a better life. Some of them probably came here for religious freedom, right? So what is a push factor? A push factor would be like down in Honduras and Guatemala, some of my neighbors, there's violence and stuff happening there, their family's in danger, and it pushes them out. A pull factor is jobs and higher pay, and they want to work, and they want to come and make a living, and they look at the United States and they say, we can have a better life there. So there are factors that push people out of their country. One of the things that's happened is there's been 2 hurricanes in Central America that's wiped a lot of stuff out, and people are like, I don't have anything anyway. Might as well go. And so they come hoping to have a better life for themselves. The other issue is we need to update the immigration laws. The limits that have been placed, especially in the Western Hemisphere from the law in 1965, I won't go into all of that, but has really made it difficult for people in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras to come legally. It takes time. It takes 10 to 12 years to actually go through the process and do it legally, and you still might not necessarily make it in the country. How do we find a way to make legal immigration quicker and easier for people who want to come and really want to work hard and want to be here in the United States? We can do it. And everybody, Republicans and Democrats all know it has to happen. They do. They all know it. It's just trying to get the details down, right? So how do we as the Christian community speak into that need? One of the other reasons that people come for family reasons, they come for employment, but we also have this thing called refugees seeking asylum. When there is war or something happening in a country and they're leaving, they seek asylum They seek safety. The United States has always been a place where people have come. In the late 70s, early 80s, Iowa was the place where people from Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia, we took them in. We took them in. And we had a Republican governor, Robert Ray, who set this all up and said, come, we want you. And the president sets that refugee number, right? And the last few years under President Trump, it's been set really, really low. Now, to be fair, President Biden hasn't changed the number. So you have both a Democrat and a Republican who have set the number really, really low. And there are organizations and there are churches who are saying, we want to bring in these refugees. These are fellow Christian believers who are being persecuted, and we want them to come. And so, again, we have to think about kind of setting that number. The family channel, this is how long it takes for people, wait time to come legally to the family channel. And then you have the work channel. I want to show you something here. So we think about people immigrating for work. I know this is boring you guys to death. I get it. I'll get through it really quick. All right. Oh, that doesn't work. Most of the time, what you get are people, look at the top one. Category 1, persons of extraordinary ability in the arts and the sciences. Members of profession, skilled workers. Look at over here. Other unskilled laborers restricted to 5,000. Now, when we think about, and by the way, I have a problem with unskilled. Okay, Dane is one of the most skilled persons that I know who works at a factory, right? You work at a manufacturing place. And so people who work in manufacturing at the pork processing plant, I mean, it takes skill to do those things. So it's an unfortunate name that they put on it. But look at how small the number is. And these are people who want to come. They don't have education, but they're willing to work, and they're willing to work hard. We need to change the immigration system to make it easier for those types of things to happen. Okay? This is the refugee number I was telling you about. We won't spend time on that. All right, so what are some action steps? And then I'm done, and then I want to hear you all talk back. And there's a lot. I took 3 presentations and combined them into 1. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm really glossing over here, okay? But what are some action steps that we can take? Well, first of all, I think get involved. The best thing you can do, and this is something you can all do, reach out to your fellow students who are from other cultures. And the other thing I would say to you is if you ever hear somebody saying racist things in your school, like things that are inappropriate and racist and insensitive, tell them to shut up. Stand up for them, right? Stand up for your immigrant neighbor in school. That is one of the most Christian things I think you can do. Be a blessing to them. You might get punched in the face, but you're getting punched in the face for Jesus, right? Which is a good thing. Stand up for your immigrant brothers and sisters at school. Get to know them. Ask them about where they come from, or their culture, or whatever. I'm sure they'd love to talk to you about it. And then you can tell them about your life, or go jump on your trampoline, whatever it is you want to do. Start or support a local food bank. I'm going to tell you right now. So this is more for the adults. Here's one of the things I found when the pandemic hit. We got a lot of food banks kind of in the area that really do a great job. You know what the highest need is, and that needs to be dealt with, is diapers. We started diaper drives in Sioux Center. And it wasn't just for immigrants. It was for anybody. Diapers are expensive, and formula is expensive. And I think one of the ways that fits really well, I'm guessing, if your church is like mine, very pro-life, what's more pro-life than diapers? Start a diaper drive. Figure out in the community who's in need, and you'll be surprised. You won't be able to keep up. Word of advice. I didn't know I would get to know so much about diapers. I mean, all my kids are long out of diapers, but 5s and 6s, you can never have enough. They go through the newborn and the 1 and the 2s really quick, and everybody wants 5s and 6s. So if you do a diaper drive, emphasize you need 5s and 6s. You guys should do a diaper drive. Go around, gather diapers, right? Have your school do a diaper drive. Tell Wayne Dykstra at Unity, or can't remember the guy at Western. What's his name? Yeah, that's it. I should know that. And I don't know who the Sheldon principal is. Who's the Sheldon principal? You don't go to Sheldon. All right. Sure. Tell them that you want your school to do a diaper drive. And I bet you they'll be like, that's a great idea. I'm glad you thought of it. All right. Politically, start getting involved. Start getting involved. Look, pro-life. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm pro-life, but I'm pro-life all the way. So for me, pro-life means babies, but it also means helping people flourish. What does it mean to help people flourish? So I actually see this issue as a part of the pro-life issue. Immigration reform and border security. Don't let anybody tell you, right now, there's this whole like, we got to secure the border. Of course we do, but we can do both at the same time. You guys have one of these? Boy, you're, yeah. Some people's kids, I tell you. Just teasing you, teasing. Look at, you know what we can do with technology today? So border security, I want to say something to you right now. Border security, I've had Republicans say this, we don't need a wall. We don't need a wall. Because we can secure the border in ways with technology, right? We can do it. And we can do it easily. And that's what this is Republicans telling me this. We know we don't need a wall. We've got other ways to do it. We can secure the border and do immigration reform at the same time. We can hold them together. And that has been the thing that I've been trying to get both Republicans and Democrats to think about. There are some days where I'm really, really pissed off at the Republicans. There are other days where I'm really ticked off at the Democrats because they're just as stubborn. We can do both of these things at the same time, right? Write your senator or member of Congress. Write them. You guys know how to do, no, you don't know how to do email. I figured that out. High school students and college students don't even know what email is anymore. But you can go online and you can find a way to message your senators and your congresspeople and tell them, we can do both at the same time, and they'll know what you mean when you say that, right? The other thing I want to say very quickly, and this has been something that I've been working with the business department at Northwestern on. Some of you can use your kind of, brains that you might use for something else for good. So if you think about starting a business, how can you use your skills and abilities, your passions, to help others flourish? How can you do it? If you're going to be a farmer, I don't know if any of you are going to be farmers. How can you use your business for the benefit and the flourishing of others? So when you think about your career, don't just think about money. I know money is important, okay? Don't just think about money. And you can think about a family, but think about what you're going to do with your life is going to impact other people and impact the world. So that's what that social entrepreneur, use business for good or whatever you go into, teaching, nursing, whatever. Use it to help people flourish. Be a blessing. If you haven't heard anything I've said all night, it's funny you all look at me then, right? Be a blessing to other people.
Give me that look,
Be a blessing. All right. All right, that's it. That's my presentation. What are your questions? I want to hear it. You got a few minutes. Questions, comments, disagreements. You can argue with me.
Now you know how I feel.
Oh, yeah, whatever.
I'm sure Dane's got.
I teach at 7:45 in the morning, so I know what it just, would you say something? For 50 minutes you've been talking? What?
Yeah, so in school, we take language.
Yeah.
And usually it's just for the grade
Yeah,
or the entrance
Yeah.
to get into college.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the advantages of having second language?
Yeah.
For relational purposes?
oh, yes, for relational purposes, Spanish. I'm kicking myself. I took French. Not sure why. But now I wish I'd taken Spanish. So taking Spanish, especially where we live, can be really beneficial. But one of the other things, and I want you to hear me now. Hopefully this comes off well. I was listening to somebody saying, all right, we talk about how do we prepare young people for the world, to make a living, blah, blah, blah. Actually learning a foreign language and coding. That's what one person said. Learn how to code and learn a foreign language, and that will set you up. Now, again, I'm asking you to think about how you can use that for the benefit of your neighbor. How can you use it to help people flourish? And I think learning another language and learning about other people's cultures is immersing yourself in it and being willing to look foolish. I'm looking at some of you, you're pretty good at looking foolish. So, that was a joke. That was a bad joke.
He was looking at me.
I wasn't. I was looking at him. That's why he was like, what? Come on, let's go. I'll punch you in the face, right?
For Jesus.
Yeah, punch me in the face for Jesus.
Is that I just came back from a mission trip.
Yeah.
And I like to do these.
Yeah.
Spanish speaking
Yeah.
part of the world. And the people I'm with want to speak Spanish. They don't have it.
Yep.
And I don't know why I can't. There's a lot
You
of
speak
things
Spanish,
I
yeah.
can't, But I like to do that.
Yeah,
It
that's great.
does so well to bring the two groups together.
Yes, it
And
does.
you say, Tom, come over here. What's this guy trying to tell me?
Yep.
Well, I may know, I may not.
Yeah.
We'll try and figure it
A lot
out.
of times, like if you use hand signals and talk louder.
It's just a
Yeah,
great
just kidding.
game of building that communication and
Yes.
building relations. And it's not about the class. It's
Nope.
not about college entrance.
No.
It's about
That's absolutely right. It's absolutely right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. My tendency is to talk louder because I think that I might, that they'll understand. I did that when I was in Germany. I was trying to buy a German donut, and there was this old lady. She only spoke German, and I spoke English, and I was like, donut! And she was giving me hand motions, and it's great. But yes, you're absolutely right. Learning another language. You can do it you don't have to go to school to do it. You can do it on Duolingo or what are some of those other apps. But- All right, other questions, thoughts? What do you think? Yeah,
I think it's hard for adults, but also kids, to put ourselves in the place of someone who has to flee from a
Yeah.
terrible situation.
Mhm.
And I just, it's so out of our culture and line of thinking, and do you have any suggestions for how we can
Yeah.
familiarize ourselves with the plight of others?
I don't have advice on how to familiarize yourself with that necessarily, but really quickly, and I think Dane, this is what you guys are going to do. You guys are going to Kansas City.
Possibly, yeah.
And, well, yeah, possibly.
What? Since when? Relax. This is what we're talking about after the show.
Okay. But one of the things we did, I go to First CRC in Sioux Center, and I helped out the youth group. They look a lot like you. And we took a group of young people from Sioux Center and we took them to Chicago. And what was interesting is it was a serve project, but we didn't do any work. What we basically did was we were put in neighborhoods, Puerto Rican neighborhood, African American neighborhood, and we got to see the neighborhood and we got to experience the culture. And really quick, there's one story where on Sunday, we went to church, an African American church, Christian brothers and sisters, and they're talking and they're preaching, and all of a sudden somebody mentioned Republicans. The entire place booed. And I looked at my students and I could see this look on their face like, what is happening? That night, I brought it up and I said, how did you guys feel about that? And one was like, I was embarrassed. The other one was like, I didn't know why they were booing. And it was one of those moments, they didn't necessarily know what it meant to flee, but they knew what it meant to be in a different culture where people didn't think like them. And just for a moment, they felt awkward. And I think that putting yourself in that place can be really important. Now, we unpacked it and we talked about what's good about being Republican and Democrat, and talked about gun control and how when you live in Sheldon, Iowa and want to go deer hunting, of course you're going to have guns. I mean, our idea of guns and owning guns, it's not the same as Chicago where you get people getting killed. And so we're able to have those types of conversations. And what that does is it opens you up to empathy. How can you at least begin to try to understand other people's perspectives? That to me is the beauty of serve projects. I tell my students, and some of you could disagree with me on this, the work we do is not that important. Okay, yeah, we build buildings and we do some stuff, maybe clean up some stuff. All right, yes, that's good. What's more important is you get your world rocked and that you're put in a place where it ain't Sheldon, Iowa anymore, or it's not Sioux Center. And realize that not everybody in the world thinks like you, looks like you, believes the same things as you do, yet they're made in the image of God. So how do we deal with that? The more you can do that, I think the more empathy, capacity for empathy you can build. That's what we're missing today. The ability to be able to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and think, how must they feel, or how might they think?
That's really the purpose of why I take groups to different.
Yeah, yeah.
And Kansas City, you guys are gonna hear in a little bit, that's exactly what I wanna do.
Yeah, and
You're
Kurt
gonna-
will do it.
We've been there before, we've been immersed in that neighborhood, so we actually know, and sometimes we go there and work.
Yep.
Sometimes we go there and interact with people more, and I found as you immerse yourself with these people, you find out, I love these people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're no, you have an image of them, but immersing yourself and understanding where they come from, what they do, how they talk, that they're really no different than you, other than where their geographic location is.
Yeah.
Helps you understand what it is to truly look at them in with God's eyes.
Yeah. And I'll say this though. So yes, I agree with you 100%. So this is, I preached a sermon last Sunday, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer is one of the guys I really love. And he says this. He says, you have no business going to Kansas City, Kansas, if you guys can't love the people living in Sheldon, Iowa. Bonhoeffer would say, if you can't love the people who are your real neighbors in proximity, why would God entrust you to go someplace else? So learn to love the people here. Learn to love the people at your school that maybe annoy you, maybe you think are different. How do you reach out to them? How do you be a blessing to them? That doesn't mean you shouldn't go to Kansas City.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
And part of that is the reverse. You go understand the people, and then you can
And
come
come
back
back.
and relate
Yeah.
to your neighbors.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yep.
What were you gonna say?
So when we go and talk to other people, maybe they aren't open to us, how can we help like open them up to this idea of Christianity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think, so I approach it this way, and it's interesting because I have students in my youth men program who for the longest time wonder if I'm even a Christian. Now, stay with me. I am a Christian, and they come around, right? Because what I say to them is maybe the point early on isn't to get them to believe in Christianity. Maybe the point early on is just to treat them like a human being, to love them, to get to know them. You know, one of the things I did when I used to teach high school, I taught at Pella Christian High School, and I always got along with some of the down and outers and kids who hated school and so on. And there was this one kid who came into my room every morning, and he wanted me to listen to his rock band. And that's what I did for 6 months. He'd come in, a couple times a week, say, hey, we just recorded a new song. I want you to listen. And I put it on. It was weird, but I was like, hey, man, this is great. And I would encourage him, and I would talk to him. And what's interesting is when you enter in and treat people with dignity and respect, and they know that you're not there with an agenda, like I'm only in a relationship with you to get you to believe in Jesus and then I'm leaving, eventually those conversations come. And then you're able to have some of those more meaningful conversations. But for me, it starts with you as a human being. How do I engage you? And listen, there will be times where people won't want to talk to you. And this is the problem. We automatically get offended. We're like, oh, well, if they don't want to talk to me, well, I don't want to talk to them. And Bonhoeffer would say that's not the appropriate response. We keep at it, right? I had high school students who I thought hated my guts because every time I tried to talk to them, they'd like snot off, or they wouldn't say anything, or whatever. They wouldn't look me in the eye when I saw them in the hallway. And it was only after they graduated that I found out that I was their favorite teacher. What would have happened if I had said, oh, they don't want to talk to me? Well, I'm not going to talk to them. But I just kept at it. So how do we make our engagement with other people not dependent upon how they treat us? How do we be a blessing to others? How do we stand up for others? And I can't say enough that I think for some of you, that's the call that God's putting on your life. Because I'm guessing there are kids at your schools who get made fun of for whatever reason. And are you willing to walk alongside them? Are you willing to come alongside them, stand up for them? Takes a lot of courage. That's kind of where you're at right now. Right? It's your life. And in Christian schools, this happens. I know. I taught in one, of my kids go to one. I know what goes on in Christian school. How do you come alongside those who are hurting? Great question. Wonderful question. I knew it was there. That's why I picked on you. Any other questions? Yeah.
He originally came to the States because of a domestic violence
Yeah.
situation.
Yep.
There was an order out for her to be killed.
Yep.
They sent her here. She's been here for, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years. Her English is awesome,
Mm-hmm.
very highly educated. She comes to church with me. But she does not have a work permit.
Yeah.
They sent her here with a tourist visa.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Her lawyer doesn't seem to make any headway for her. And she really doesn't want
No. So it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of churches. And I'm not saying this is what Emmanuel.
I like that. She really wants to be a citizen.
Oh, of course, yeah. There are churches, I know of churches that they are starting programs to try to help people navigate some of those things, knowing they can't do it perfectly, but I don't know, maybe this is beyond Emmanuel's capacity, but at the same time, if you have people who are lawyers or people who go to the church who could speak to that, that is one of the most difficult things, is trying to navigate some of those things. Now, one thing I would say is if it is domestic violence, she could check out the Family Crisis Center and Sioux Center. I know someone there who could help her. My wife works there. And they sometimes we'll deal with cases where visas are involved because a tourist visa is not the right visa for her to be on. There's a different kind of visa. So she could check to see if the Family Crisis Center could help her out. But you're hitting on one of the more difficult things is so many people who are here. Some undocumented immigrants get tricked. They're here because an employer promised them something, and then they end up here, and then they're stuck. They don't know anybody. They're undocumented. There's labor trafficking that goes on. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen.
And there's so many fake papers out there.
Right?
But you don't want to do that.
No. In fact, listen, I'm getting off track here, but one of the things that I'm working on right now, and I've talked to both a Republican Iowa senator, state of Iowa senator, and a Democrat, is a driver's permit for undocumented immigrants, driver's license. They can't get driver's license. And again, I think sometimes as people, like, you hear somebody like me come in and they give these presentations, like, all right, what can we do about it? A driver's license is it makes the most sense, and it's so practical. Like, why wouldn't we want law enforcement supports it, businesses support it? So we're working, a group of us are working with the Iowa Senate to try to get for the next year to see if we can get a driver's license bill passed. And the more people that we can get, more Christians. So I'm doing this in Minnesota too. Somebody reached out to me and was like, here, I hear you talk to evangelicals about immigration. Yeah. Will you talk to us? We're trying to get the driver's license bill passed in Minnesota. It passed the House, and they're trying to get it passed the Senate. Again, big agriculture is for it. Law enforcement is for it. Guess who's not for it? Evangelical Christians. Right? And so they're like, how do we get churches to support? And here's what happens. And I'm getting my preaching voice back on here, right? I'll call up these churches and I'll say, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I want to talk about immigration. And I'm going to come at it from a conservative perspective. And you know what I get? Oh, we don't want to be political. We don't want to be political. And I'm kind of like, well, good for you, right? That you get to not be political, even though the gospel, I would argue, is political, not in the Democrat-Republican sense, but we call Jesus our Lord. He is our King, right? I mean, anyway, I get pretty fired up about that. Evangelical Christians need to somehow begin to view this issue a little differently because they actually hold the key. Because if the evangelicals, for example, in Iowa, said to Chuck Grassley, we want you to pass DACA right now, guess what Chuck Grassley's going to do? He's going to pass DACA. Same thing with Joni Ernst. And Joni Ernst she's really come around on some of these issues and so on, but a lot of times it's the evangelical Christians that are kind of holding back. I think there's an opportunity here, and hopefully we can get there on simple things like just letting people have a driver's license, so they're not stuck. They have identification.
And she knows she has to work, but
Yep.
she has to work at a place that accepts undocumented
Yeah.
workers,
Yeah.
which pay like
Yeah.
maybe $7 an hour.
Yeah, and take advantage. Yes, and take advantage of people. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, and that's why we need a way. We need a way to change the law to make immigration easier. But we also have to have a way to deal with the undocumented immigrants who are here. And my organization is putting forward what they call restitution-based immigration reform. It's not amnesty. We're not just saying like, oh, okay, it's fine. Now you're a citizen. It's a recognition that they broke a law. But it's like when I'm driving up to Minnesota and I'm going too fast and I get a speeding ticket. I'm on the wrong side of the law. How do I get on the right side of the law? I pay a fine. And so there has to be a mechanism to help many of the people who are here who we don't want to leave. There are some who are criminals that even the undocumented immigrants who are good members of our community want them gone, right? But how do we find a mechanism to allow people to work toward either permanent legal residency or citizenship? And this is too where Democrats, see, I can be hard on Republicans, but the Democrats insist that they get citizenship. And I talked to undocumented immigrants and they said, we'll take legal permanent residence. We don't need to vote. We just don't want to have to look over our shoulder every time. And yet you get people on the left who won't take that. And it's kind of like, all right, how do we find this? There's got to be a way here in the middle. And that's what my organization is trying to do. And you've hit on some of the struggles that they have. But I would send her to the Family Crisis Center once. They may not be able to help, but they might be able to help her get the visa she needs, maybe. Yeah. Good question. All right. Are we past time?
We're wide open.
All right.
We got till 10 o'clock.
There's some
right?
real discussion happening over here. So, I'm trying to, you have a question? Any final question? Any last question? Thank you so much for coming on really short notice. Thank you for putting up with me, all of you. I very much appreciate it. Be a blessing. Be a blessing.
He has a blessing.
All right, good. Thank you. That's a way. Let's give him a round of applause. Yes. Woo! All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jason, for coming. We appreciate
You
you
bet.
taking the time. All right, all you knotheads, stay seated for a minute. Well, goodness sake, it's only 8 o'clock.